What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. You check out the content. And with that being said, man, this video I want to talk about Rich Paul. I made a few videos about Rich Paul, right? And the reason I'm making these videos about Rich Paul is because I just think that LeBron James gave Rich Paul a basically a layup. And by a layup, what I mean is, to me, LeBron James has been one of the easier clients to manage. You know, you had somebody who's one of the most famous athletes in the world. Then on top of that, LeBron James has not really had any scandals off the court or things like that. Some people don't agree with some of the the stances that he take or some of the moves that he has made, but you don't have a lot of like he don't have the type of legal issues that Ja Morant have. He don't have the situation where like what's the other guy, Zion, where he has some type of eating disability, and then on top of that, you know, um, baby mama drama and stuff like that. LeBron James basically has been able to steer away from those type of scandals, right? A married man with three kids. So it's basically a layup. It's a situation where Rich Paul can just focus on building LeBron James's brand and his image, right? But he hasn't done that. And so and I want to point out ways that he how because he hasn't done that, I want to point out ways that has really is really affecting LeBron James in an adverse way, right? And first of all, it takes away from his leverage, right? When an agent uh when 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 an agent isn't respected, which I don't think that Rich Paul is really respected as an agent. Every negotiation starts from a weaker point. Teams, brands, and medias know they can push harder because the agent has no weight behind their words, right? And so every time Rich Paul come out and he make a statement, and the statement is a statement that is basically it's questionable, or even in a lot of cases is untrue. As an agent, Rich Paul is operating from a disadvantage, and he would know that, or he would have realized he would have known that if he was a person who was trained to be an agent. This is a guy who LeBron James put into this position, with no formal training or anything like that. And I know, and that's what's hurting him. Like I said, so the minute Rich Paul steps into a room with guys who and business people who do this, who were trained and went to college for this, he's operating at a disadvantage because they don't see him as experienced, and they see him as somebody who's weak. And a lot of times he do look weak because of the way he go about things, right? So the next thing is damaged client protection, right? And so people presume that the client chose this agent for a reason. Now, if the agent looks incompetent, uh, the client looks mismanaged, and the perception spreads fast around entertainment. It also spreads too, right? So people look at LeBron James because he's represented by a agent who looks incompetent. So they see LeBron James as a way who look incompetent. It's almost like having a like the weakest link. And so the agent Rich Paul is the weak link in that, and so that can be exploited. And so that's why you see LeBron James right now at the end of his career, like they talking about, they're scrambling and trying to control the narrative. They're putting different messages out there, like he might go to this team or he might go to that team. When everybody around the NBA and a lot of fans know that LeBron James don't have the leverage that he had back in the past, right? And so when you put out a false narrative like this, it makes the agent look weak, and it also makes LeBron James look weak. So moving forward into LeBron James, the next chapter of his career, like life after basketball, you and then they see this kind of stuff, then this would be a situation where they'll know that LeBron's representation is weak, can't represent him in the in the correct way, and so that's going to set LeBron James up for even more problems going into his career after basketball, right? So again, all this hype and everything that I don't this hype that Rich Paul is trying to do for LeBron James, it's just really doing him a disservice when he should be behind the scenes like directing everything. It's a full-time job for real, and it's one that, in my opinion, that Rich Paul is not really qualified for, and so let me get to the next point about Rich Paul. So, and believe it or not, right, reduced opportunities for LeBron James, like him having Rich Paul as a representative can reduce his opportunities, right? Because credibility open doors. Lack of credibility closes doors. Sponsors, executive partners, and partners avoid messy representation because it signals risk, chaos, and unprofessionalism. So anybody who wants to tell me that with Rich Paul doing his podcast, talking about trade this player, talking about clients, commenting on clients that are not his clients, it is unprofessional. It signals risk and chaos, right? And so the more he do these type of public give these public statements, the more and more he exposes himself, the more and more I think he reduced opportunities for LeBron James. And just think about it. LeBron James is his biggest client, right? But he have other clients that are not as famous as LeBron James and don't have the leverage that LeBron James have. And so if he can potentially derail LeBron James's career and derail opportunities for LeBron James, just think of how it would affect somebody like a Tyrese Maxey or another player like who else do we have? Anthony Davis, like guys who are not really as big as LeBron James, and like I said, don't have the leverage that LeBron James have, right? And so, this situation right here is going to look worse for LeBron James, like I said, in retirement. And so let's talk about like the erosion of trust and so like when you go into the erosion of trust, once people realize that the agent has no credibility, every interaction becomes transactional and skeptical, right? Trust evaporates, and without trust, the client's entire business ecosystem becomes unstable, right? And so that's another great point, right? Because once people realize that he has no credibility, then again, that just gives you it just weakens the foundation that you're trying to build on. And for LeBron James to have been in the NBA for 23 years, had no scandals, has a I mean, by most people's account, has a good image, right? Like I said, married with 3 kids, don't have any side chicks or anything or people that's coming out and saying LeBron did this, LeBron did that. Don't have any of those kind of scandals, right? And then you still have an erosion of trust because the agent come out and he do things that are unprofessional or say things that are unprofessional, make statements that everybody can prove, they're not true. It's this guy in so many different ways, man. This guy right here, I think, is just really derailing LeBron James's career, and it really didn't have to be like that. He could have built on the image that LeBron James is presenting, and had LeBron James just looking like the boy next door type of image, just really just squeaky clean. Now I can see if LeBron James had got caught up in some type of scandal, then you have to go behind LeBron James and clean up his mess. But it hasn't been that type of situation with LeBron. Like I heard somebody say one time, or another player say that LeBron James was a diva. One time when he was at Miami Heat, he got mad because they didn't have a certain type of cookies on the plane on a private jet. Like if that's all you got, like you complaining because he wanted a certain type of cookies on a plane or something like that, then that's how you can build on that. Yeah, I mean that's nothing. That's nothing. If that's all you can come up with, well, LeBron James act like a diva. He act like a brat because they didn't have this his cookies on the airplane. What superstar athlete or entertainer don't act like a brat? And so Rich Paul really just like I said, he just derailed LeBron James's career when it comes to that. And it's going to look really bad for LeBron James trying to do business with somebody like Rich Paul representing him. And so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm going to check you all out in the next video. Peace.